Hi, my name's Lee Kirkpatrick, and I'm an incident lead with the Sophos Rapid Response team. And in today's video, I'm going to be running you through a query that we've previously discussed on one of our presentations as part of this series. Specifically, the query that we're going to focus on today is RDP logons from external IPs.sql. Now, this query, as we've previously discussed, is fairly self-explanatory based on the name, but is going to be looking for successful RDP connections that have taken place from external IP addresses. So that would be anything that's non-RFC 1918. So what we can do is we can take that query, we can log into our Sophos central instance, which I've done here, navigate to Threat Analysis Center and Live Discover. Now, what we can do here is select the designer mode. This is actually going to allow us to create a new query. And upon selecting this option, what you'll see on the right is the Create New Query button. So that's what we want to select after the designer mode option. Now, this is going to drop us into a view where we can actually create a query. And in this instance, there's a SQL box where we can paste that OS query that we've copied from the GitHub page. The second step that you want to do here is actually select the devices you want to execute this query against. And we can do that under the device selector option. Now, this is a query that you should only be running or only works against Windows devices. So on the filters option here, we can expand operating system and remove macOS and Linux and click apply to only focus on Windows operating systems. Not that if you executed this against a Linux device, it would cause any issues. You would just be getting errors for those devices. Once you've selected a filter that's appropriate for your organization, you can then choose the devices that you want to execute this against. Now, typically, I would actually suggest running this across every device within your organization. Yes, there's even Windows endpoints that we've come across that have had RDP exposed incorrectly to the internet. So definitely something that I would recommend running this against as well. So you can do that by selecting this little tick box here. Once you're happy with your selection, you can click the Update Selected Devices list to say those are the devices that we actually want to execute this query on. And as you can see here, we have 2 endpoints selected. Once you're happy with everything, you can execute the query by selecting Run Query on the bottom right. It's going to prompt you and say, do you want to run this untested query? Which of course we do. And then what we'll do is we'll wait for the results to come back. Now, depending on the resources of your machines, depending on the network connections of those machines, will depend on how quickly the results actually return. It shouldn't take too long for this query to actually execute, but please do be patient. As I say, it depends on a number of factors on how quickly this query will actually return results for you. Once it's finished, you can look at the status column, and that will let you know that this query has completed or failed for whatever reason. If you scroll up, there's a section called Query Results that will actually show you the results of the query. Now, hopefully in your environment, you wouldn't actually get any results back because that potentially means that there's a RDP login or RDP logins from external IP addresses, and that could indicate potential attacker activity. Now, the most important fields to take note of after you've executed this query would be the endpoint name. So where are these RDP connections actually taking place to? So what device did that RDP connection actually initiate on? And as we can see, it's server 22 DC and server 2022. We only have 2 devices in our test environment. So unfortunately, both of these have been logged into with RDP from external IP addresses. What's also really useful is to know the date and time that this occurred. So expand that column out and you can see exactly when this event took place. The event ID is also incredibly useful to understand what the event is. And if you're not overly familiar with those events, there's a description column here that will give you a very brief overview of what each of those event IDs actually means. Also, what's incredibly beneficial is the username. So what was the account that actually successfully logged in? And subsequently, the source IP address is an incredibly important field as well, because that field is going to give you the context of who or where a potential attacker was actually logging in from. Now, if you do see logins from these non-RFC 1918 IP addresses, I think it's definitely something that warrants further investigation. It may be a false positive, and it could be an administrator that's, opened RDP on a server temporarily. But again, if the administrator can get in, so can attackers. So at this point, you probably want to take additional measures, such as isolating that device and bringing in an incident response team so they can scope out the potential compromise. I hope this video has been useful. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll catch you on the next video.